It's like an extra layer of vision.
Burma is now at the beginning of a road.
So apparently it's the finest and best university on this planet. I have the pleasure to work with very talented guys. Two of them are here, they're actually in the room. Chris and Ben, so as I know nothing about technology anymore because I sit all the time in meetings. I see Ben in the middle there, he's searching for Chris. I saw Chris coming in, there's Chris. So if you really want to know how this stuff works, please talk to them. This is my emergency slide deck. You don't have to be gentle, but it is mainly a summary of what is out there and what one can use. So if you're already managing devices, you will be bored. If you're not managing devices, you will hopefully see this as a useful collection of tools you might want to add to your setup, and maybe there's even something you haven't considered using in your node. So the easiest to start looking at Apple device management is looking at iOS devices, because they're very more simplified single-user systems. And to do that, you typically rely on profiles. Here you see we're installing a profile for Acme Incorporated, and this profile, laser pointer, comes actually with a lot of things. It comes with a few restrictions, some managed applications, they're even installing some books, maybe that's the manual for new starters and the HR handbook, you get an email account and all of that. And with that being installed, what actually happens is you install a really little bit of signed XML which encapsulates all the information. There's the identifier, there's a versioning, and all that you've seen before. So in this example here, the config profile configures a Wi-Fi. And this is, for example, here you find the SSID name, you find the encryption type, the password, and if the network is hidden or not. And the device should automatically join that network if it is available. So configuration profiles are really just plain, simple, signed XML. How do you get them on the devices? You can use Apple Configurator. That's the Apple provided tool, available for free in the App Store. You have to plug in your device to achieve that, but Apple Configurator also allows you to export these profiles. Then you can, for example, mail them to your user. You can make them available for download on a website. The easiest way to start managing devices if you have no infrastructure. Create your profiles, make them available on a trusted source, and your users can be pointed there by the help desk. And basic things which you always struggle to communicate, like your VPN, will be installed by the user just installing and trusting that profile. However, what everyone does if it comes to a bit larger scale is that you use over-the-air push-based deployment of these profiles. And this is then the mobile device management server. Apple provides a reference implementation, which is part of OS X server. And I really like to stress that this is a reference implementation. This doesn't scale. 100, maybe a few more devices, but after that, it can become tricky because there is a history of issues with the database and all of that. But they always implement all features they're using or they're providing in that. And it is a good source of information what you can do with current profiles in MDM. MDM can manage applications, books, accounts, open with, and all these things. You can configure a lot of policies. For example, users not allowed to do unencrypted backups. You can say passcodes have to be at least of that complexity and length. You can allow or enforce or disable Touch ID. You can do single sign-on. This is something I haven't explored, so please don't ask me about the single sign-on bit. You can remote control the device. You're able to say, this device needs locking, or removed passcode because the user's forgotten that complex passcode I enforced on the user. You can send inventory reports back to your MDM, and you can manage firmware upgrades. What tools are out there? The aforementioned Profile Manager and OS X Server, and really lots and lots and lots of commercial tools. I'm sorry that I haven't put all tools on the slide deck. However, there's enterpriseios.com, really, really good resource. They collect all the tools available, and you can nicely compare them. It's broken down by different feature sets. Two of the most commonly used tools are AirWatch, multi-platform tool. They do a lot of shortcuts, and they often use, we discussed it yesterday night, they often use a lot of actually private APIs. So when Apple chooses to change them, these features will break. Slightly closer to what Apple wants you to do are Bushel, and it was the Jamf Casper suite, so this shows you that I really didn't care updating these slides yesterday. It's now called Jamf Pro. Bushel is a pure MDM solution. Casper suite or Jamf Pro offers you more features, especially in the area for Macs. You choose your poison, you look at your budget. A little hint on my slides. If you see an Apple, like behind the Profile Manager on the top, that means it's a vendor-provided tool, mostly available for free or included in OS X Server. If you see a euro sign, sorry, I'll go with the safe currency here. It's a commercially available tool, and if you see the OSI compliant logo, that means it's open source. Also, whilst we're talking about the slides, if you see or know a tool that should be on there, please send me an email or send me a Twitter message or something like that, and I can incorporate that. That will help you to increase the quality of the information there. So, OS X Server. Beautiful server for those who like shiny interfaces. About 20 euros in the App Store. That's probably now 25 quid. You get shiny graphs. It helps you to manage your users and your accounts. It comes with a very useful feature, but that only works if you're behind the nut. Really reliably, it allows you to cache all downloads from the app stores, and it also allows you now, if you decide to do so, even cache user iCloud content. Makes, especially downloading apps, if it works, significantly faster. And then there's that Profile Manager, as you can see here, with which you can then manage mobile devices. How do we get our devices managed? There's a really nice program called Device Enrollment Program, DEP. It's one of the more recent things Apple have brought out. It's not leading edge top, brand new, but it is a very, very, very easy way to automatically enroll devices which are owned by your organization into your MDM. So the so-called zero-touch deployment workflow is you buy a device directly from Apple or one of the major distributors, maybe even your local Apple partner, and they assign your device based on the serial number over the device enrollment program to your MDM. That means if your device goes through the setup assistant, there's that activation phase after the device comes online. The first question after you see the hello is typically, hey, let's get you online. And that does nothing else than validate your device identifier against potential DEP enrollment. Oh, this device is enrolled in the university's DEP. So if I go through the setup assistant, my device would be pointed immediately to our MDM. It's very nice because it's hard for the user to escape that. Whenever they factory reset it, they come back into management. How do you get on there? Deploy.apple.com. There's a sign-up process. It requires multiple approvals to prove that you enrolling are actually authorized to do so. They typically want someone really high up in the organization to confirm this. after this has been done, you just have to make sure that every purchase is assigned back to your DEP account. The good thing is an organization can have multiple DEP accounts. So there's not that restriction as with the developer connection that you can only have one. For a multinational or federated organization, that means you probably want to have for each location, each country, you want to have your own DEP program because there you can be a bit more granular in the management. So how does that look? Here's my Acme incorporated iPad, fresh out of the box, factory reset, whatever. And there's a little video. So we get the device on the Acme Wi-Fi, and there we go. We will automatically configure your iPad. You see, all the setup of the system was skipped. That is a feature of the MDM. You can say skip all these steps. You didn't see any of the boring questions if you want to send that debug data. They're running a caching server because it's really, really fast. And all applications are installed. There might have been settings and other stuff, but you can make with DEP and your MDM, you can make the deployment of iOS devices incredibly slick. So then there's the problem with procuring apps from the App Store. I still see a lot of people buying these vouchers, giving their user then a redemption code, and then that piece of software the organization procured ends up in the user's personally owned Apple ID, and the license stays there forever. Fortunately, Apple has now a solution which is called Volume Purchase Program in the second version, which allows you to bulk purchase content. And you then can assign that content to users or devices without losing control about that license. So the user is still required to have an Apple ID, and the organization is enrolled in the volume purchase program. Again, deploy.apple.com, you can sign up for that. And what you do is you manage the volume purchase program via a token with your mobile device management. Most major tools have integration for that. Now you've got your software procured. We purchase credit into our volume purchase program via purchase order, so it's like a prepaid account. And if a user needs a license, you go to your volume purchase iTunes portal, you say I need so many licenses of that. The licenses are available within minutes. Then you can go to your MDM, and now you have to somehow associate your user with your volume purchase program account. And this is a really nice process because the organization will never ever actually get the identity of that Apple ID. Because what happens is the user will be prompted to sign in, that's either on their iOS device, that's on their Mac with the App Store or iTunes. And the sign-in just allows the organization to get an anonymous token which represents that user. So we don't even know the email address or any information about that Apple ID, it's just a token we negotiated. And then we can assign via the MDM that uses an API talking to the BTP system, the content which is then made available to the user as if the user would have purchased it. The beauty of the solution is if the user leaves the organization or you would like to reclaim that license, we can revoke these assigned individual items, and it doesn't have to be all of them, it can be, but it doesn't have to. And the user will be informed that the organizational provided content will be claimed back in 30 days. And I haven't figured out when, but most of the time the users even offered a discount to buy the apps personally. You get control of your content the moment you revoke it. So that's very nice because the person leaving doesn't lose productivity, whilst you can repurpose your content immediately. So this is the workflow we use, mainly developed and implemented by Chris. We procure devices. For one of the schools, we did this several years. They decided that they're not too expensive, the iPads. So we procured devices to a DEP-enabled account. They were handed out directly to the end users. They got their devices. The devices showed then as part of the setup system a sign-in dialog. They signed in with their corporate credentials. Then the DMP enrollment was completed. The mobile device management kicked in, configured a lot of settings, Wi-Fi, email account, VPN, and deployed pre-purchased applications. I'm not sure if I mentioned that you don't have to assign content to accounts, you can also assign content to a device. So there's even, if you do shared iPads nowadays with School Manager, you can assign the content directly to the device so the user doesn't have to sign it. All right, but actually, do you imagine a lot of students being in our beautiful libraries working on their non-branded iPads? Most people still use them. And Mac management is actually way more interesting because you have a full-flavored Unix. So, as I come from the good old Unix and Linux world, I try to explain OS X management based on what most Unix people know. You do a Pixie boot, a network boot, just mainly that your whole system is not using the local storage. Then you partition the local volumes. You do some kind of bootstrapping. For every flavor of Unix, there's a tool, Kickstart, Debian Bootstrap, and all of these. Then you install additional software, and then you somehow eventually configure your system. And the OS X workflow is pretty much the same, but with a lot of marketing slang, because Apple wants us continuously to learn their language. And so Pixie boot, it's net boot or net install. You can partition, but to be honest, with volume encryption, so file vault 2, it becomes harder and harder and harder. Then you image your system, and the configuration is what I said earlier, profiles or the previous version still kind of supported. It's called MCX. So again, for those of you who like shiny interfaces, Apple's in-house provided tool for management is Apple Remote Desktop. It allows you to indiscreetly, if you want to look at multiple people not working simultaneously, but it allows you also to run commands, Unix commands, running in every selectable user context, here the super user, on a group of devices. And it allows you to automate stuff because it has a fantastic automator dictionary where you can actually automate workflows. However, I see myself not as that kind of sysadministrator. I'm more that kind of admin. So I think let's look at this more in depth in terms of what we have available for those people who are not shy of the command line or actually developing code. So the device boots by Apple's Boot Service Discovery Protocol, BSDP. It's nothing else than DHCP with a lot of proprietary stuff around it. There's a lot of information on this on the internet. There's authoritative information from Apple on the top link. And then you can either run this again with OS X server. OS X server allows you to run a DHCP server. If you don't have a DHCP server, have a DHCP server in your organization. You don't enable that feature on OS X. You just enable the netboot server. And when a Mac starts and you push the N button for netboot, or you hold down the Alt button to see all boot options, the Mac will initially try to configure its network. And if it hasn't received, together with the basic network configuration, the information about boot services available, it will ask again. So there are two attempts to actually collect via the boot service discovery, DHCP protocol, the information, are there any servers in the network available from which I could boot myself. There is a really nice implementation in Python, BSD Pi by Papaya. Then there is the option to configure it entirely yourself with just a standard ISC DHCPD. You need TFTP to download the kernel. Then you can choose whatever you like, HTTP, HTTPS, and NFS to download the rest of your base image. This is what we configured in Oxford. That works also across subnets. All of this works across subnets. All you have to do is you have to relay your DHCP requests over between the subnets. So IP helper address is the word you have to throw at your network guys. And there's a really nice article and video available by Justin who explains how NetBoot in general works. I think we have made this public in the Orchard wiki, but if somebody wants to configure it themselves and they can't find anything, please drop us a line. There are 3 types of NetBoot. So there's the typical NetBoot, which starts a system just diskless, kind of like the good old times where you had like a lot of terminals booting off one servers and the terminals didn't have any local storage. The system is then running without using the local disk, and depending how it's configured, you either write back to the server all changes to the file system, or you keep it just in a RAM disk, so that means if the system reboots that these changes are lost. That's what Apple, for example, does with the internet recovery. Then there's net install, which is just doing the same, but then going immediately into a pre-configured OS X installer. Apple provides a tool to create those. And then there's net restore, which doesn't go into an installer, but it restores a disk image with the standard ASR command. But in the end, it's all the same principle, just that you've heard these 3 terms. In the end, it's always with the main goal, making the system not use the local hard drive or SSD. How do we create these images? Manual, obviously. Here you see the Apple provided tool, the system image utility. You choose an OS X installer. It gives you options what you want to do, and you click your way through that assistant. Then there are other tools, and again, this list is not complete. Casper and every commercial tool has a net install image creator available for you. Then there are nice open source solutions like Benz, AutoCasper NBI. There's also an equivalent for open source tool called Imager. And if you really want to automate this, again, a Python script that allows you to even create these images without touching any user interface. So, how does this look? This would be normal startup of a Mac. And what you do if you have NetBoot enabled is it boots off the network, and you will see the local volume will be a hard drive with a globe. What can you do with that? For example, run your imaging choice of tool and install your favorite operating system. Speaking of imaging, the best terminology I found comes actually from Microsoft. There's a thick image which contains everything, full-blown in one big image. Advantage, one image to maintain, but this is a lot of work because you have to always go back to that image. Hybrid image is a larger image with the software which is a bit more volatile, and maybe your configuration profiles, which I tried to indicate with the system preferences icon. Easier to maintain because you can swap individual components. Thin image separates everything out, so you just have a base OS image, and then you lie down your customizations like corporate backgrounds and all that stuff. Or you don't nowadays image at all. You get a fresh Mac. It comes with the vendor pre-installed standard OS supplied. So what people do is they still netboot the machine, but they just add software on top of that. And as you might imagine, in combination with DEP, especially if you're not interested in imaging, so you're not changing the base OS on the system at all, you probably don't even need to netboot anymore. You just install that software via your mobile device management and your management framework. There's loads and loads and loads of imaging software available, commercial as well as open source. Imager, developed by Graham, he's speaking at the conference too. is a wonderful open source tool to allow you to build nearly every workflow. You pick what you want to use. Probably best to ask for the experience of the community, what they would recommend. And to create images, Apple Disk Utility allows you to snapshot existing drives, auto damage, nice open source tool, and all the commercials. And there's a netboot image creator. I think it's no longer in beta. So here's the Mac. It has been imaged. It boots again off the local drive, and voila, there's your nicely customized machine, which has everything installed as you like it, is enrolled in your management framework, and then actually the hard work starts, because you have to maintain that machine and keep it up to date. And I think this is actually the harder task than spitting out machines, because you want your whole estate properly managed. So to base management, you actually need to know what's going on. So the key here is to have really good inventory and have visibility. Obviously, again, massive choice of tools, just a few. Let me adjust that a bit more to what's actually reality. If somebody wants to sell you that SSCM, that wonderful tool to manage Windows boxes, is a good tool to manage Macs, I think it's a really bad idea. It doesn't really work, but that's my personal opinion. There's FileWave and Jamf Pro, commercial tools. If you can afford them, they bring benefits like support, quality of the support. You have to make your own experiences. And then there's SAL open source, was developed by Graham. I think it's a little bit orphaned, but it is a good inventory solution. There are others. There are several tools which integrate nicely with Monkey, to which I will refer to later. But you need to sort out the inventory first, because if you don't know the state of your systems, you probably won't be able to manage them and keep them consistent. So the biggest challenge obviously are applications, because you get applications via the App Store, and you probably want to keep the applications folder somehow under control. And we recommend our users, even if they have local administrative privileges, to keep their custom personal apps just in an applications folder within their user directory. It's just to segregate concerns. It's a little education issue, but you say, let us look after the system applications, and you keep all your applications in your home directory. If you have a cloud-based storage solution, you might even keep your applications in there, because then you drop it in there and you have the application on all your systems up to date. But nonetheless, there is that problem with that random software, which continuously pops up that users should install stuff, and users say, no, leave me alone, I want to get my work done, and I don't have time for this IT stuff. And Apple doesn't make our life easy, because as a Unix admin, I'm used to have a package manager available. I can just configure my sources, and I type a command, apt-get install, zipper install, whatever. And from my selected available catalogs, I will be able to install software with a single command. Greg Neagle went off to fix that, and he developed Monkey, now available in version 2, with a shiny, wonderful user-facing interface, the Managed Software Center. It is a very sysadmin-friendly toolset. The core distribution on the back end is very, very lightweight. It only requires you to run a web server. All configuration is XML plist based, so text based. You can use your editor of choice. Obviously, it is structured content, so there are a lot of user interfaces available for this task, if you choose so. The Managed Software Center gives the user an application which looks really very, very similar to what they use from Apple, so you don't have to re-educate your users. And it has a really, really excellent ecosystem of software available around this. There was a talk now 2 years ago in Gothenburg, what's new with Monkey, given by Greg. The link is down there. It's a good introduction, but it introduces you to the really, really existing big ecosystem of tools. Just to mention a few. Monkey Admin by Hannes, who unfortunately can't make it, is your graphical editor for your Monkey repository, in which you keep your software and you assign it to be installed on your clients. Then Sal allows you to collect information back and have inventory. Alternatively, there's Monkey Report PHP, another reporting solution. Monkey Web Admin is, again, a Python-based web application that allows you to edit your repo and assign the software to clients. There is a major rewrite, Monkey Web Admin 2, being developed. I haven't had a chance to ask Greg on the status of that, but I think when he eventually completes the refactoring of Monkey itself, I'm pretty sure he will go back to that. We inherited from Graham Gilbert Monkey Trello. We rebranded it after it has been pretty much rewritten from scratch to Monkey Staging. That allows you to automatically stage your software through as many stages as you like. For example, you develop your software in an unstable area which you have only assigned to a few machines, then it goes to your super users, a testing area, and if you deem the software being stable enough, you can stage it to your whole estate. And the idea behind Monkey Staging is that this is a fully automated workflow by running a script every so often, and it is visualized, the information, the whole state is kept in a Trello board, so if your organization doesn't like information of the organization being leaked outside, this is not a tool for you. But the idea is you build your software and it flows through these stages without you interfering, unless a user calls you and says there's a problem with your application. Google has provided a cloud, Google Cloud, it's probably now called different, based implementation of Monkey, Simian, really, really nice web interface, scales very well, but you have to host the entire solution in the Google Cloud. And there's a tool which integrates Monkey with the Jump Pro product called Manana, which we are using internally in Oxford. The key thing is that Tim Sutton maintains in his GitHub repository a list of all Python-based tools available for Mac admins. It's github.com Tim Sutton Python-MacAdmin-tools. It's hundreds and hundreds of tools. There is a section for Monkey. It's incredibly comprehensive. How do you build software automatically? There's Auto-Package. Integrates very well with Monkey, but integrates with a lot of other tools too. They're actually made for each other, and it's the automated preparation of software for distribution. It's based on, again, XML, property list XML, and you have recipes which can be chained to complete certain tasks. In this example, we have 3 recipes. 1 recipe to download Firefox, 1 to repackage it as we would like it to be, and then the Firefox.monkey recipe to inject it into our Monkey repository. There are tools which help you writing these recipes. Writing recipes is not hard. The first recipe is hard, but you look at existing ones and you champion what other people have invented, adjust it to your needs. You can even use existing recipes and just change little values using a concept called recipe overrides. However, Recipe Robot, open source tool, you drop an application on it and it helps you building the recipe. Again, a talk from the same conference gives you a good 50-minute overview of how you can make this work in your environment. The video is freely made available by Tycho and his colleagues. The next challenge is the velocity Apple enforces on us in terms of OS upgrades. Every year, in the last few years, a major OS upgrade, and I don't believe this is likely to change. I actually believe it's going up. I took the time to count the Yosemite updates 2 years ago, and you see there are 6 major versions. However, if you look closely, there are actually 5 minor platform-specific updates available. So it means within a year, 11 OS updates. So that keeps us on our toes to make sure that these come out. And if you want to install your machine, and especially if they're hardware-specific ones and you're still net booting, you have to make sure that you can support all of these different types. So my recommendation is, if the system is running, try to stick as much as you can to in-place upgrades, especially for minor versions. And there are a lot of workflows around Apple's provided Apple software update tool. You can use it again. If you want to have a cache locally, you can run an Apple software update server. But there are other tools. Reposado is another open source implementation of the same thing, written by Greg Needle. I sound like a broken record. And then there's a web UI, Margarita, to manage that. There are alternatives available, but we have a fast enough internet connection, which actually doesn't make us not worry about that. And with more and more people using actually laptops and they are less frequent on premise, it probably is anyway no longer such an issue that you want to cache your software updates. The main reason to run a software update service is that you can control which updates are being seen by your clients. So if you want to do QA and you want to only make updates available after you're convinced it doesn't break anything in your system setup, then that's probably something you want to consider. If you want to deploy major OSs, again, some people image because they want to get all systems with a major upgrade back to a well-known state, because you never ever catch everything the user makes in terms of changes, and you want to standardize again. Commercial tools provide workflows, and there is Create OS 10 install package, which is a little script which you can use to transform an Apple-provided installer and transform it into an installable package, which you can deploy, for example, using Monkey. And Monkey also integrates nicely with Apple software update, as you see on the right-hand side in the screenshot. So you can make updates available. It's actually an App Store screenshot. Sorry about that. Okay. There we go. How do we configure our clients? There are several methods in-house which you can use. There's the defaults command with which you can use to modify the property lists. MCX can be deployed in several ways. You can deploy files. You can deploy MCX still via OS 10 server. You have these profiles, which I alluded to for iOS, also on OS 10. And there are a lot of proprietary ways to configure stuff. A lot of software still doesn't stick to the Apple way of configuring the application via a property list in the library preferences folders in all these different locations. And to make life even harder, there is now this wonderful cpref D, and if you look at the man page, that's the man page, so it doesn't tell you a lot about it, so you have to figure out how that works. I think personally the way forward is profiles in NVM. And we are not there yet. We still use a lot of MCX, which we deploy, but whenever we touch an area again, we go back and try to do this via profiles. And profiles can ship standard MCX. So if you find a way that you can configure via MCX, you can make this a profile and ship it via NVM. You're then in a total different area of concern where you have to make sure that all your profiles arrive, but I think that's the way Apple wants us to go. There are the typical usual suspects in terms of config management, Chef, Puppet, and many, many more. They have more or less official support for OS 10. Obviously, they're more focused for the server and not the client domain, but they're pretty good, and there's a lot of knowledge out there. I would say there's at least one of the major big players who uses either or of those to manage their estate. And you will find that very easily. Monkey can deploy packages without payload, so without any software to be installed on the system, and you can just run a script via that payload-free package. It is important that if you write these scripts for your payload-free packages that you make the script idempotent. That means it can run again and again and again and again, and the script understands that what it's aiming to do has already happened, and it will still return the system in the same state. And please use the Apple-provided tools where as possible. So if you want to modify configuration files, use defaults or plist body. and don't hack the file with anything else. Commercial tools will provide their own workflows. Yeah. Again, MDM, all the commercial ones, again, enterpriseios.com. There are attempts, and these are the two slightly more mature attempts for mobile device management on OS X, commandment and micro MDM. Still very far away in terms of feature list from what the commercial ones can offer, but as I love open source, I would encourage you to look at them, and if you have resources, help them. And as mobile device management is dependent on you having a specially signed push certificate, that's something you could learn about in about an hour from Ben and me. There's also a wonderful script that helps you to create a certificate signing request, which you can use then to use with Apple's push service. Topic that always gives you trouble is authentication authorization and probably auditing. Apple comes with a built-in Active Directory client, but it's very, very, very basic. Anything which gets into complex Active Directory forests, really tricky. There are commercial tools which help you with that. And they have that feature of mobile accounts where every account is mirrored by a local account, and if the Active Directory is unavailable, the credentials will be cached locally. Depends if you like this with regards to your security model, but it allows you to manage Active Directory-based credentials even without the Active Directory, for example, being exposed outside your corporate network. There's Apple Enterprise Connect, one-off fee. Can somebody remind me, is it still $4,000? Okay, something like. Sorry?
5,500.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. So, single fee, engineers help you to set it up. All your problems are promised to go away. Nomad, there will be a talk about this today. It is a really nice client that deals with managing the Kerberos ticket without your client being bound to an AD. Very, very promising. And an alternative is Kerbminder. So I think Nomad is their really, really good chance to solve problems with Active Directory integration without actually binding. There you see a slightly dated screenshot of Nomad in your system tray. Encryption, obviously commercial tools. Yeah, we have a wonderful commercial solution which I can really just discourage from using. Use the built-in provided tool from Apple, FileVault 2. There's interesting stuff happening with the new file system that has even encryption built in. You should require and enforce FileVault. You can do this via several means. There are MDM commands to do that. And as an organization, you actually care about your data. So you want to make sure that not only your user can access and decrypt the data, you also need to be able that you can decrypt it. There are different key escrow solutions. Cauliflower Vest and Crypt are two really nice small open source tools to which you can just send your enterprise or your device specific decryption key and then store, hopefully securely. Commercial tools have solutions for that. As we're running out of time, very, very quickly, there is a lot more useful stuff around. OS Query gives you visibility about your endpoint, be that macOS or a Linux system or whatever. Plan B is a nice tool to remediate managed systems no longer being managed if your user really decides to fight you. By the way, if that happens, you're probably doing your job wrong because the user should be thankful for you helping them with their job. Santa is a tool by Google, incredibly crazy stuff. It allows you via a kernel module to whitelist or blacklist applications. And then there's Central, developed by these two friendly chaps over there, Henry and Eric. It's an Elastic-based event handler. Hot shit. I can't tell you anything about it, but there's a talk about it then. What time is your talk?
Today, the last talk.
So keep a little bit fresh for
In
that.
this room.
And here's your complete OS 10 workflow. As we do it, device comes via DEP into MDM, or another way, manual enrollment imaging. You get your system somehow tied to your credentials, AD or whatever, install profiles, use managed software, which is an app store via DPP, Monkey for your main package deployment, and update management. We still have imaging as a workflow that will eventually go. What have we learned? I think the key lesson is really be the friendly, helpful, and trusting and empowering sysadmin. Automate as much as you can. Initially, it's quite a lot of work, but the more workflows that are automated, the more time you have to do the interesting stuff. And if you automate yourself out of your job, you can actually just focus all the time on interesting stuff. Never ever fight Apple's recommended tools and workflows. And please, there's a fantastic Apple community. Nowadays, mainly on Slack, macadmins.org. If you're not on that Slack group, then definitely sign up there. Again, I haven't had the time to update the items, but the URLs are still valid. They are the 2 official guides, and most people don't read them. They are updated typically within a few days after the major OS release, and they mention everything that's available for us as sysadmins to deploy and manage systems. It's help.apple.com/deployment/OS name. Yeah, and that's it from me. Thank you for your time.